Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we have some very important news out of the state of Wisconsin where Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders has made a very important endorsement in the race for Wisconsin's 3rd Congressional District. The Democrat Rebecca Cook, who was the Democratic nominee in 2024 where she narrowly lost to the Republican Representative Derek Van Orden, is running again and she has received the endorsement of the Vermont Senator. Sanders announced on Thursday that his endorsement for Rebecca Cook in the 3rd District, making a foray into one of the handful of districts that could decide the next House majority, which President Donald Trump carried by 7 points less than a year ago. Sanders says, Rebecca is a working-class fighter who developed her populist roots in rural western Wisconsin, a daughter of farmers, a waitress, and a small business owner. She's lived through failed policies from Washington elites and is ready to deliver tangible outcomes that working people will actually feel. Sanders' endorsement brings renewed national attention to a race that Cook lost by less than 3 percentage points last year as GOP Representative Derek Van Orden earned a second term. It also highlights a notable cross-section of support for Cook, who has also been endorsed by the Blue Dog Democratic PAC, a longtime supporter of party moderates, as Democrats in Washington and around the country review the party's policy platforms, personalities, and coalitions after they suffered defeat to Trump in 2024. Cook said in an interview that Sanders' endorsement means a lot to her because Bernie really is no bull, you know what. He's been able to pass legislation in the fray of Washington while remaining really true to his core values that center around the working class, and his voice has never really wavered. Cook said she voted for Sanders in the 2016 Democratic presidential primary and has valued his authenticity ever since. So this is pretty important for this race. This district, which again, as the article mentioned, is District 3. The District 3 takes place in the Driftless area in southwestern Wisconsin, including Eau Claire and La Crosse. The incumbent representative is Republican Derek Van Orden, who was narrowly reelected in 2024. Van Orden is running for this race again. There is a possibility that the Wisconsin Supreme Court may have to step in for this House map in 2026. There may be a lawsuit to redo the House map in the state of Wisconsin, but until that happens, we're going off the assumption the current House map will be the House map for 2026. There's more videos out there both on YouTube and more articles online that will go over that more in depth than I could in this video, but that is a potential option as well. But again, until then, for this map, this district is expected to be very close regardless. Derek Van Orden, the Republican representative, will be the nominee again. The Democrats, however, do have a competitive primary going on right now for the Democratic nominee to take on Derek Van Orden. Rebecca Cook, the former Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation board member and nominee for the district in 2024 and a candidate in 2022. Laura Benjamin and Emily Berg, former Eau Claire City Councilor and president of the Eau Claire City Council, are also running in this Democratic primary. Emily Berg does have the endorsement of Heather Digby Pardon, a political blogger. However, Rebecca Cook has the endorsement of Senator Bernie Sanders and several Democratic U.S. representatives for this race, as well as the important PACs of the Blue Dog PAC and Emily's List PAC as well. Cook has also raised about $1 million with $960,000 cash on hand. It's going to be a tough fight, but it looks like she has the early lead in the Democratic primary, having been the nominee back in 2024. This race is expected to get very close. Cook Political Report has it as a toss-up. Inside Elections has it listed as tilt Republican. This district, according to the Cook PVI, is Republican +3. So based on recent election history and such, it is a lean Republican district for Derek Van Orden, but did show a very close election in 2024 where Van Orden won by 2.7% against Cook in a very close race. We'll be going more into the results in depth in just one moment. In 2022, Orden won this district by 3.7%, and back in 2020, when the district may have been redrawn very slightly but looked very similar, the Democrat kind defeated Van Orden 2.7% when Orden was running for this race. Back in 2018, it was a safe Democratic seat at 19.3%, so a very big shift in just the last few election cycles. From 2022 to 2024, with Cook on top of the ballot for the Democrats, this district did shift about 1 point towards the Democratic direction. From 2020 to 2024, however, it has shifted about 5.4% to the Republican side. From 2018, it shifted about 22 points towards the Republicans. So this district, even though it is certainly a lean Republican district, it's expected to be one of the closest races in the country in 2024. And just to lay out the stakes for this district, right now, The Republicans on the 270 to win consensus ranking hold 208 House seats, Democrats 205. On the overall House map, Republicans hold 220, Democrats 215, and you need 218 House seats to have a majority. So the Republicans have about a 3-seat majority in the U.S. House, and Wisconsin's 3rd district is one of those very important battleground districts where the Republicans currently have a representative that if they were to flip, Democrats could be in a strong position to take back the House in 2026. And I would go so far as saying if the Democrats do win back the House in 2026, this Wisconsin's 3rd congressional district could be a very big reason why. So this district is very important for which party controls the House in 2026. This district, which had about 412,000 votes in 2024, as you can see, is very weirdly drawn, and that's one of the reasons why I think Democrats in Wisconsin are hoping to redraw this map, is there are several counties in this district, some being rather larger population, some being kind of middle of the road in terms of population size, and some like Sauk and Pepin being smaller in terms of population. But this district has an interesting mix. However, it is a very competitive district. The largest county by population, according to the 2024 votes, was La Crosse County, which ended up voting for Cook by about 13%. The second largest is Eau Claire, which voted for 15 points for Cook, having about 61,700 or so votes. Portage, the third largest county, ended up going for Cook by about 5 points, 42,539. So the 3 largest counties in this congressional district did vote for the Democrat Cook, and by considerable margin. After that, pretty much every single county in the district is a Republican county. There are a few that get competitive, like Chippewa, Vernon, and you could argue Crawford, Richland, and Jackson, but all of them voted Republican for Van Orden in this election. The only 3 counties that didn't happen to be the 3 largest counties in the district, in Eau Claire, and Portage, and in La Crosse. So very, very interesting in that regard. Again, this is a very close race, 51.4% to 48.6%, roughly about a 11,200 vote difference or so, separating Van Orden and Rebecca Cook. Very, very close. Looking back at 2022, what was also a close race between Derek Van Orden and Brad Pfaff. In this very close race, we see a very similar map. Only 3 Democratic counties in La Crosse, in Portage, and in Eau Claire, the rest of them all going Republican. So the map has been very similar from 2024 to 2020, or 2022 to 2024. The margins in La Crosse at plus 16, Eau Claire plus 13, and Portage plus 3. A little bit more Democratic, La Crosse 13, Eau Claire 15, and Portage 5. So the Democrats, Cook was able to make a little bit of improvements there, but nothing really too drastic to sway the map all that much. So as for what this district could do for 2026, it's going to be an important one to watch for, because in 2026, if the Democrats are winning the House, we're probably going to see a district like this going blue. And to see that happen, well, my eyes are on La Crosse and Eau Claire counties, both for seeing if Rebecca Cook can expand on those margins in these areas, maybe getting Eau Claire up to like plus 18, La Crosse up to plus 16 or so, but also Portage County. Portage County, which is the smallest of the 3, if we see Rebecca Cook winning this county by about 10 points or so, that could be a sign that Democratic turnout is a lot higher in this district, and that could be a sign the Democrats are on their way to potentially winning this district in 2026. But again, that's a big if. For 2026, for the Republican side, you're looking at this map from 2024 and seeing if Derek Van Orden can essentially replicate this map, keep the margins in the counties that he got, and trying to play defense in what should be a very strong night for the Democrats. The Real Clear Politics voting average for the generic ballot, currently the Democrats up 2.4, which, just for reference, the last time we saw a Democratic national vote win on the House side of things was 2020, where Democrats won by about 3 points or so and held the House 222 to 213, and in that election, this district was actually represented by the Democrat kind by 2.7%. So if the Democrats are winning the national vote by about 3 points or so, that could be an indicator of this district if this district is going red or going blue. But this is certainly going to be a very close district to watch for in 2026. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts, and I hope to see you in a future video. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video. Today we have some interesting news out of the state of Florida, where special election candidate Democrat Josh Weil, who you may remember from back in the earlier spring, has announced that he is running for the U.S. Senate in Florida in 2026. The Florida Democrat Josh Weil, the once little-known progressive teacher who stunned the political world in March by raising nearly $14 million for a failed congressional special election bid, is now running to become the Sunshine State's next senator. Weil is the first major Democratic candidate to file for the 2026 Senate race, saying, quote, "I'll be everywhere." Weil said of his planned campaign tour across the state, which officially kicks off on Wednesday. By entering the race, Weil hopes to replace U.S. Senator Ashley Moody, a Republican selected by Governor Ron DeSantis in January to replace Marco Rubio once he became Secretary of State. Moody, a former state attorney general who shares a close relationship with U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, brought in $1.2 million through her joint fundraising committee and raised nearly $400,000 in her campaign account during the first 3 months of this year for the 2026 election. She has yet to attract a serious primary challenger so far. Moody has also brought together a campaign apparatus that looks similar to the team that helped Trump win in 2024, one that includes pollster Tony Fabrizio and former Trump campaign co-chairs Chris LaCivita at a super PAC supporting her election. Her ties to key players in the Trump orbit are a sign the president is unlikely to support a challenger during the GOP primary, even though DeSantis picked Moody without asking for Trump's permission or blessing. Trump's involvement in the state he calls home could make Weil's Senate bid more difficult. He previously sought the Democratic nomination for Senate during the 2022 cycle, but lost to former Representative Val Demings, who went on to lose to Rubio by 16 points, despite massively out-fundraising him. Weil said that in the next 17 months, Trump's favorability could fall, even in Florida, citing his tariffs announcements as an example. By this time next year, Weil said, we could see Ashley Moody trying to distance herself from Trump to save her political campaign. So this is very interesting news. I'm going to show you first the 2026 or 2025 special election results. You may remember the name now where Randy Fine, the Republican, defeated Josh Weil, the Democrat. This district was represented by Michael Waltz, who got appointed to the Trump administration. So this was an open seat. Randy Fine, the Republican, defeated Josh Weil by about 14 points. Even though when you look at this race, you may think, okay, what's the big deal? Well, actually it showed the race going into it could be very close, where the polls going to the general election, Fabrizio Ward, which is the Republican-aligned pollster, showed Josh Weil leading over Randy Fine 44% to 41%, 10% of the vote still being undecided, but Weil actually leading this race. Another was St. Pete polls, which obviously is very popular in the state of Florida. Their polling firm comes up all the time when you talk about Florida elections. Randy Fine here only led by 4 points over Josh Weil, where 6% of the vote was undecided. That was within the poll's margin of error for Randy Fine versus Josh Weil. It could either be a big win for Fine or it could be a tied race if you look at it the other way for Josh Weil. So there's a lot of optimism among Democrats that Josh Weil could make this race very competitive and maybe even flip this race. And that's saying a lot, seeing as it was a very uphill battle from the Cook PGI of this district, which is Republican plus 14. So based on its election history, you would say it's a likely Republican district, but that's as close as you could get without calling it a safe Republican district. And then Josh Weil was able to raise almost $9.5 million in this race, and he spent everything but $1.2 million of it trying to win this race. So the Democrats are throwing a lot of money and a lot of support behind Josh Weil to try and flip this otherwise safe Republican district. However, Randy Fine ended up winning by 14 points, which is still an underperformance when you look at the district itself. For instance, in 2024, Michael Waltz won this district by 33 points. In 2022, he won it by 50 points. And in 2020, before it was redrawn, he won it by about 21.3. So 14 points is not as good as Michael Waltz did. It's literally less than half as good as Michael Waltz did in 2024 back in November. But Randy Fine, the Republican, was still able to hold on and win it. Now we're talking, though, about 2026, where the Republican Ashley Moody, the incumbent U.S. Republican senator, will be running for re-election, and now Josh Weil will be running on the Democratic side. Jake Lang is another Republican who's also in this race. He is declared for this race. All eyes are on Republicans Kat Cammack, Matt Gaetz, and Corey Mills. If any of them decide to challenge Ashley Moody in a Republican primary, things should get more interesting on that front if they do. Josh Weil right now, there are several Democrats who will file paperwork to run for this race. Josh Weil is the first Democrat to officially join the race. Other Democrats who have filed the paperwork include Ron Cruz, Frank DeMola, Cale Dougherty, Alex Gould, a business owner, Alan Grayson, the former U.S. representative from the 9th District and perennial candidate, currently running for state Senate, is probably the most well-known Democrat in this bunch that could be running. Another that's expressed interest is Alexander Vindman, a former director of European Affairs for the U.S. National Security Council and whistleblower in the 2019 Trump-Ukraine scandal, and brother of U.S. Representative Eugene Vindman, who represents a district in Virginia. As for the general election, though, the predictions for this one are pretty solid for the Republicans. Inside Elections, Cook Politico, and Sabla Crystal Ball all have this race listed as solid Republican or safe Republican. Race to the White House has it listed as lean Republican. And when you look at the election history in Florida, it's really not too much of a surprise. I showed you the House seat, the 6th district that Wheel ran for. But let's look at the recent election history. The Florida Senate race in 2024, Rick Scott, despite some polls showing it being a close race going into Election Day, where maybe it could be a little bit more competitive, Rick Scott ended up winning by about 12.8% in this Senate race. In 2022, Marco Rubio, as the article mentioned, won his race by about 16.4%. Back in 2018, when Florida was still a toss-up state, Rick Scott had a very close race against Democratic Senator Bill Nelson, where he defeated him by 0.12%. But even then, 2016, when Florida was much more of a swing state, Rubio still won by 7.7%. It has really swung a lot in recent years to the Republican side. You can look from 2018 to 2024 on the Rick Scott side of things. Florida shifted about 12.7% in the Republican direction from 2018 to 2024. From 2022 to 2016, Florida has shifted 8.7% for Marco Rubio on that side of things as well. On the presidential side, Donald Trump won the state by 13.1% in 2024 after winning it by 3.4% in 2020 and winning it by 1.2% in 2016. Florida shifted 9.7% from 2020 to 2024. From 2016 to 2024, it shifted 11.9%. Florida is becoming one of the most fastest growing Republican states in the country. And even though 2026 is supposed to be a very good night for the Democrats, I don't think in the state of Florida it's going to be all that likely going to change. Lastly, on the governor's side of things, we saw Ron DeSantis win the governor's race by 19.4% in 2022 after winning it by 0.39% in 2018. Again, just to show you what that shift ended up looking like, Florida swung approximately 19 points to the Republican direction. So for the 2026 Senate map and the side of things, for right now, this Senate seat in Florida, even with Josh Wheel running, maybe he'll be able to raise some money in this race after his special election performance. But it's a Florida Senate race in 2026. I think we expect Ashley Moody to win this race by over 15% of the vote. Even though it is supposed to be a Democratic-friendly midterm year, I don't think Florida is going to be one of those states where even if the Democrats are polling well enough, it won't be well enough to win the state of Florida. And I don't even think it'll be enough to win it by under 15 points for the Republicans. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit like and subscribe. If you did, leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts, and hope to see you in a future video. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video. A few weeks ago, I did a video about former Republican, now Democrat David Jolly, launching a long shot bid for governor of Florida as a Democrat in 2026. Today's video, I am going over a new poll that came out showing Byron Donalds running against David Jolly and what that race could look like very early on into the campaign. So, starting out, if you're unfamiliar, the 2026 Florida gubernatorial race, which will be taking place on November 3rd, will be electing the next governor of Florida, as Republican incumbent Ron DeSantis is term limited per Florida's constitution and cannot seek a third consecutive term. So there will be a new governor in Florida. Florida, however, unlike when DeSantis was first elected in 2018, which was also a Democratic blue wave year, as 2026 is expected to be, Florida is much more of a Republican state now than it was back in 2018. Florida, which for the early part of the 2000s and really ever since 2016 and 2020 was seen as one of the most important battleground states in presidential politics and at the Senate and governor level as well, has become much more of a likely Republican state in the early 2020s, and by 2026 could argue is a safe Republican state electorally. And in large part, DeSantis being governor and Republicans moving to the state of Florida has been a big reason why. On the Republican primary side of things right now, 2 Republicans are running, most notably Republican U.S. Representative Byron Donalds, who has the endorsement of President Donald Trump and several members of the Trump executive branch, is the leading Republican to be the nominee at this time. Charles Burkett, the mayor of Surfside, Florida, is also running in this race. The only way this primary will get really competitive is if First Lady of the state of Florida, Casey DeSantis, who has expressed interest in potentially running, jumps into this race. That would certainly shake things up and make this Republican primary more competitive than expected. But until then, we can assume Byron Donalds is probably going to be the Republican nominee without much of a fuss. And again, President Trump has already endorsed Byron Donalds, as well as several members of his administration, and U.S. Senator Rick Scott as well has also endorsed in this race. On the Democratic side of things, David Jolly is the only Democrat, again, former Republican turned Democrat, that's in the race at this time. Fentress Driscoll, the minority leader of the Florida House of Representatives, has expressed interest in running, though she has not officially joined the race as of yet. 3 Democrats have officially ruled out running: Nikki Fried, Jared Moskowitz, and Jason Pizzo, who is running for governor as an independent, not as a Democrat. 3 other Democrats, Daniela Levin-Cava, Gwen Graham, and Angie Nixon, are seen as potential candidates as well. In the early hypothetical polling, David Jolly, when he is included in this race, if Daniela Levin-Cava runs for this race, it does show that she would be in first place. Jolly would be in third place behind Graham at 13 and the Jolly at 10. However, with her not running, Jason Pizzo, who at the time was also potentially running, leading in that regard, also not running in that race. So until one of these two jump in, it looks like David Jolly either starts in first or second place on the Democratic side of things, depending on who runs. But let's look now also at the independent candidates, because this could play a very important role as well. Jason Pizzo, the former Democrat, now independent, is running in this race. Another independent lawyer, Domnachi, a writer, is also running, and John Morgan of Morgan & Morgan has expressed interest in running as well. This race is listed as solid Republican for Cook Political Report, Inside Elections, and Sabato Crystal Ball. The recent poll that came out, though, shows a actually more competitive race, but you might need to hold on a second. Victory Insights, which conducted this poll between June 7th and June 10th, shows Byron Donalds leading with 37%, to David Jolly 31%, and 32% undecided, with a 2.8% margin of error. So this race, starting out at a 6-point margin of victory between Donalds and Jolly, could be seen by Democrats as a very good sign in this race. This race could be more competitive than expected. And it's possible having that viewpoint could be correct, but I also think it's a case of just look at the numbers here. Donald's getting 37%, Jolly getting 31%. We know both of these candidates, if they are the Republican and Democratic nominee, are going to get a lot more than this. 32% of the vote being undecided at this time certainly doesn't make things any better. But when you look at the recent election results in the state of Florida, that's where things start to get more concerning for the Democrats than Jolly starting out about 6 points down at Byron Donalds at this time. Sure, the race is still very early on, and only being down 6 points in such a red state like Florida could be seen as good news for the Democrats, but that 32% undecided number is going to be a problem, and I'll explain why. Also, hypothetical polling that's been done in this race so far has shown relatively competitive races in all the matchups. Donald's only leading by 4 points over Levin-Cava. Casey DeSantis only leading by 4 points over Levin-Cava as well. And the Signal Republican versus Democrat poll from back in October of 2024 only showed Republicans leading by 7%. But that's what the polls show in Florida. The election history in Florida shows something totally different, where in 2024, just to show you first the presidential level, Donald Trump ended up winning by 13.1%, a likely Republican margin, when just 4 years before that, Florida was a 3.4% win for Trump over Biden, which in itself was a pretty big swing from 2016 when Trump defeated Hillary Clinton by just 1.2%. The state of Florida from 2016 to 2020 shifted 2.2% towards Donald Trump. In fact, from 2016 to 2020, almost every single state in the country shifted from the Republicans from Donald Trump to the Democrats to Joe Biden. However, a handful of states actually didn't do that. They shifted towards the Republicans. California, Nevada, Arkansas, and Illinois narrowly shifted all under 1 point towards Trump. Utah shifted 2 points towards Trump, but Florida and Hawaii were the only two states to shift towards Trump by a very substantial margin, or a substantial over 1 point margin. Florida shifting towards Trump by 2.2%. Now let's look at 2020 to 2024. And this one, pretty much every state in the country shifted towards Donald Trump from 2020 to 2024. But they all did so by varying degrees. Florida, by one of the largest, a 9.7% shift from Trump from 2020 to 2024. Republican growth in the state of Florida has been very strong in recent years, and that was a big on display in 2020 to 2024. But this isn't just also at the presidential level. We can also look at the Senate level, where, here, let me pull up the Senate map as well here. From 2024 to 2018, this is going to be Senator Rick Scott. Florida shifted 12.7% towards his directions. For Marco Rubio, from 2016 to 2022, Florida shifted about 8.7% towards the Republicans. For Governor Ron DeSantis, in 2022, it was about a 19.4% win. In 2018 against Andrew Gillum, it was a 0.39% win. So the shift in Florida from 2022 to 2018 was approximately a 19-point shift. Florida has moved so much the Republican direction, it's becoming a reliable red state. And DeSantis winning by 19.4% in 2022 sets the Republicans up for a strong position in 2026. Even though it's supposed to be a strong Democratic year, I think we can expect Byron Donalds to, at worst, win the state of Florida by over 10 points and right around the edge of winning it by 15 points, to where I have my current prediction right now, Florida being an over 15-point win for Byron Donalds. I do think in 2026 it will be a better than expected Democratic year, and the Democrats are certainly going to make a lot of gains in some states that we saw Donald Trump do very well in 2024. However, I do not believe Florida is going to be one of those states. I think Florida will either continue its Republican trend or remain about the same from where it was in 2024. While we may see some other states get more competitive and maybe go back to the Democrats in some regard, Florida, I think, will stay in the Republican side of things. But let me know what your thoughts are. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you think. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And again, thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you in a future video.